Jean Živek. Omne initium difficile est. Kažu, svaki početak je težak, pa tako je i meni malo teže započeti ovaj govor. No, sigurna sam da se svatko od nas, ko uči latinski, barem jednom zapitao zašto ga učimo i zašto nam je on bitan. Neki o tome razmišljaju od samog početka, od kada su vidjeli knjigu iz latinskog, a neki su o tome počeli razmišljati kada su počeli učiti sve nastavke, deklinacija i konjugacija. No, mogu vam reći da je latinski zapravo jako bitan i možda vam sada u ovom trenutku ništa ne znači, ali nekada u životu će vam stečeno znanje biti korisno. Učenjem latinskog ne učimo samo o riječima i o jeziku, već i o civilizaciji onog vremena i arhitekturi i svemu što smo naslijedili. Pa tako, na primjer, imamo mnoge građevine diljem Europe. U Hrvatskoj je to, na primjer, amfiteatar u Puli, kao i sam grad Pula. Proverbium est sine autore attentia, poslovica je izreka bez autora. Pitate se zašto ih učimo? Učimo ih zbog sebe, ne samo zbog još jedne ocjene u imeniku, i sigurna sam da ćete se jednoga dana u nekoj od životnih situacija sjetiti barem jedne od njih. Jedna od najpoznatijih glasi Veni vidi vici, i rekao je Gaj Julije Cezar, a znači dođoh vidjeh pobjedih. A danas se po društvenim mrežama proširila verzija Veni vidi amavi, što znači dođoh vidjeh voljeh. Mnoge poslovice koje mi danas koristimo na hrvatskom imaju izvor u latinskom, pa tako ona bolje ikad nego nikad na latinskom glasi potius sero quam nunquam. Dosta često ljudi govore kako je latinski mrtav jezik, ali ja ću vas pokušati uvjeriti da to nije tako i da on živi u svim jezicima. Upravo riječ mrtav potječe iz latinskog, iz riječi mortus. Ponekad kažu i da je latinski majka svih jezika, jer su se europski jezici, baš oni romanske skupine, kao što su francuski, talijanski i španjolski, razvili upravo iz latinskog. Pa imaju neke slične riječi. Na primjer, glagol amo na latinskom znači voljeti, na talijanskom je to glagol amare, dok je na španjolskom to glagol amar, a na francuskom amen. Imamo i riječ cvijet koja također ima slične oblike. Na latinskom je to flos, na talijanskom je to fior, na engleskom flower. Engleski nije dio romanske skupine jezika, već germanske, ali zbog duge povijesti koju Francuska i Engleska imaju, francuski je dosta utjecao na engleski, te tako engleski ima dosta tih latinizama. U gramatici također postoje mnoge poveznice i možemo lakše naučiti druge jezike i razviti logičko razmišljanje, pa tako u latinskom imamo 5 deklinacija. Imamo prvu deklinaciju koju nazivamo i A deklinacijom, te je u njoj najčešće nastavak A, te je tako i sa 4. ili U deklinacijom i 5. ili E deklinacijom. Kao službeni jezik, latinski se zapravo ne koristi već više od 200 godina, no ne možemo reći da je mrtav sve dok postoji taj mali izvor i trag latinskog u drugim jezicima. A to su, na primjer, latinizmi. To su riječi koje imaju korijene u latinskom i koristimo ih u svakodnevnom razgovoru. Pa imamo riječ skripta. Skripta označava nešto napisano, većinom je to predavanje profesora na fakultetu, a dolazi od glagola scribo, scripsi, scriptum, što znači pisati. Zatim imamo riječi populacija, točnije stanovništvo, i dolazi od imenice populus, populis maskulinom, što znači narod. Riječ lumen na hrvatskom ima preneseno značenje i znači da je neko vrlo bistar i potječe baš iz latinskog od riječi lumen luminis neutrum, što znači svjetlo. U mnogim strukama latinski je također vrlo bitan, pa je i zato dio gimnazijskog programa i programa nekih drugih strukovnih škola. Svatko od nas, kada je upisivao srednju školu, imao je pravo na izbor, kako bi se reklo liberum arbitrium. Pa ako ste odabrali gimnaziju, vjerujem da ste bili svjesni svega što vas čeka, pa tako i latinskog. Učenici strukovnih škola vrlo vjerojatno će svoje znanje iz latinskog moći prije upotrijebiti, dok će gimnazijalci upisivati razne fakultete na kojima je latinski jedan od bitnijih predmeta. Sigurna sam da će i netko od vas otići studirati pravo, neko medicinu ili farmaciju, a neko možda šumarstvo ili agronomiju i tamo će vam stečeno znanje iz latinskog biti potrebno. I ovim govorom sam svima, a najviše onima koji misle da je latinski nebitan, htjela približiti važnost njegova učenja, koji se nadam da sam uspjela. I to možda je jezik kojeg više nitko ne govori i koji se ne koristi već dugi niz godina, ali kako se kaže, what lingua scales, tot homines vales. Koliko jezika znaš, toliko ljudi vrijediš.
No, du fängst an.
Also ein Hotdog wird definiert als ein Essen, was ein Beilag in einem Brotcontainer hat. Das heißt, dass Hotdog eigentlich ein Sandwich ist.
Also ein Sandwich ist etwas, das typisch aus Gemüse, Käse und Fleisch besteht und es ist zwischen zwei Schnitten Brot serviert und ein Hotdog ist nur in einem Brotchen, meistens oder weißen Brot serviert, also kann ein Hotdog kein Sandwich sein.
In populären Restaurants wie zum Beispiel Subway gibt es auch Sandwiches, was auch nur ein Stück Brot benutzen. Und wir nennen sie auch nicht Hotdog, sondern Sandwiches. Das heißt, dass Hotdog immer noch ein Sandwich ist. Und ein ein Sandwich kann auch mehrere Beilagen haben, zum Beispiel mehrere Arten von Fleisch, was auch Würstchen.
Ein Hotdog ist so berühmt, dass er nur als ein typisches Sandwich betrachtet werden kann. Ein Hotdog ist so berühmt, dass er seine eigene Kategorie verdient.
Das ist richtig, aber auch Hotdog ist klassifiziert, wird als eine Art von Sandwich klassifiziert. Das heißt, dass es immer noch ein Sandwich ist. Es gibt nur mehrere Arten von Sandwiches. Es gibt auch vegane Sandwiches.
Man würde nicht einen Taco als ein Sandwich betrachten und so sollte man auch nicht einen Hotdog, weil ein Hotdog nicht wie ein Sandwich aussieht. Ein Hotdog hat eine rohrförmige und zylindrische Füllung und kein Sandwich hat rohrförmige und zylindrische Füllung.
Ein Taco wird eigentlich auch nicht als ein Sandwich betrachtet, weil die Beilage nicht zwischen zwei Brötchen ist oder ein Stück Brötchen ist. Und ich habe auch Sandwiches gesehen, wo Sandwiches können mehrere Formen haben und es können eigentlich auch zylindrisch sein. Also das macht gar nichts aus.
Ja, aber der nationale Hotdog und Sausage Council, der die führende Autorität für Hotdogs und Würstchen ist, hat in 2015 den Hotdog erklärt, dass der Hotdog kein Sandwich ist. Und sie haben die führende Autorität, also sie müssen am besten wissen.
I držat ću govor na temu je li nam feminizam još uvijek potreban, pošto je to jedno od pitanja koje je dosta diskutabilno zadnjih par godina. Znači, prvo da razjasnimo što je feminizam. Feminizam nije nikakav pokret kojim žene žele nadvladati muškarce ili nešto, to je pokret kojim se želi ujednačiti, odnosno žele se da su muškarci i žene ravnopravni u svim pogledima. Znamo da su žene kroz povijest bile dosta diskriminirane, da ih se je smatralo glupljima, podcjenjivalo ih se, no kroz povijest se dokazalo i u jednu ruku da to nije istina. Danas žene u gotovo svim zemljama imaju jednaka prava prema Ustavu, u nekima još uvijek to vrijedi samo na papiru, a u nekima i na papiru. Neke od tih zemlja su Ujedinjeni Arapski Emirati, Sirija, Iran, Sudan. Tako da počnemo zapravo s položajem žena u antičkom Rimu, koje su zapravo rađale su se ko slobodne, imale su pravo biti građanke, imale su pravo posjedovati neku svoju zemlju, slobodno se kretati, i mogli su na kraju krajeva sastaviti neku svoju oporuku. Pravo koje im je bilo ukinuto je bilo pravo na glasovanje, pravo na donošenje, odnosno pravo da budu na nekoj političkoj poziciji i kroz povijest, kroz srednji vijek smo mislili da će se to promijeniti, odnosno da će žene početi dobivati veća prava, no žene nisu u srednjem vijeku imale gotovo nikakva prava. To je bilo jako patrijarhalno društvo. Jedina uloga žene u tom društvu je bila zapravo da rađa i da bude uzorna majka, žena, supruga, da bude podložna muškarcu i kamo god se krenulo u ono vrijeme svugdje se moglo naići na poslovicu da jedina dobra žena je tiha žena. Jedine žene koje su imale nekakav utjecaj u srednjem vijeku su bile vladarice i svećenice. Svećenice, odnosno redovnice, one su najčešće bile učiteljice i doktorice i one su bile jedine koje su mogle donositi nekakve promjene, koje su se smjele pojavljivati na nekim društvenim događanjima. I ono što je također specifično za taj srednji vijek, žene su se udavale i rađale u razdoblju od 13. do 16. godine, što je da danas pogledamo da neka djevojčica rodi dijete u 7. razredu osnovne škole, svi bi bili zgroženi, pitali bi se gdje su ti njezini roditelji i nazivalo bi se pogrdnim imenima. Ali ne moramo pogledati zapravo tako daleko u povijest, naše možda ne bake, ali prabake su doslovno rađale s 16 godina. Kasnije dolazi do industrijske revolucije i žene tu dobivaju pravo na zapošljavanje, te se počinju zapošljavati u tvornicama, no i tamo su diskriminirane, rade više nego muškarci, rade teže poslove nego muškarci, a manje su plaćene, te gotovo uvijek imaju nekog narednika koji ih psihički, fizički i seksualno zlostavlja. Do nekakvog buđenja feminizma dolazi s početkom Francuske revolucije 1789. godine, kada žene, odnosno Parižanke, sudjeluju u revoluciji, no to nije bilo prvi put da su žene sudjelovale u revoluciji, ali je bilo prvi put da su se žene požalile i da su zatražile to neko svoje pravo, odnosno Lim de Gouges 1791. u svojoj deklaraciji za prava žena započela ju je rečenicom: sve žene s rođenjem su slobodne i jednake su s muškarcima u svim pravima. I nakon toga to je izazvalo velike sukobe i ona je pogubljena na giljotini. No s tom njezinom smrću žene nekako počinju se više zauzimati i boriti za sebe, te u 19. stoljeću nastaje pokret sufražetkinje koje je osniva Lydia Becker. One su se prvobitno zalagale za to da žene u Sjedinjenim Američkim Državama i Engleskoj dobiju pravo glasa i pravo na glasovanje, a kasnije znači da dobiju sve druge žene. Često su imale neke proteste na kojima su bile odvođene u zatvor i prema njima se jako strogo i bolno su se odnosili. Nakon toga, u završetkom Prvog svjetskog rata, žene počinju dobivati neka prava, zato ljudi su onda smatrali da je to najveća katastrofa koja se mogla dogoditi i počele su živjeti koljenima svaki dan posljednji, te su žene konačno dobile pravo kretati se u društvenim krugovima u kojima se kreću muškarci, voziti auto, te do nekakvih banalnih stvari, na primjer nošenja hlača, što žene nisu smjele, no onda dolazi Drugi svjetski rat i žena zapravo za vrijeme Drugog svjetskog rata dobiva poziciju kako je imala u ranom srednjem vijeku, a to je da samo da ima pravo na rađanje djece. Završetkom Drugog svjetskog rata ženska prava se počinju pomicati i to dosta, žene se počinju pojavljivati u politici, u filmskoj industriji, žene u gotovo svim zemljama dobivaju pravo glasa. Danas žene imaju, znači, pravo glasa, kako sam rekla, u gotovo svim zemljama, no to njihovo pravo glasa u dosta slučajeva vrijedi samo na papiru. Uzmimo za primjer, muškarac i žena se mogu naći na nekoj istoj poslovnoj poziciji, no žena će se morati puno više truditi i puno više se dokazivati da dođe do te pozicije. I ne bih htjela da ovo sad ispadne, da ja govorim protiv muškaraca ili nešto, ali mislim da muškarci sami svojim rođenjem dobivaju tu neku prednost koju žene nemaju, jer dok pogledamo, dok majka rodi neko muško dijete, svi su joj, sinje, bit će uspješan, bit će muško. A dok majka rodi djevojčicu, najčešći komentar je: o, vidi kak je lijepa, samo nek ostane tak lijepa i nek bude dobra i poslušna. Ima jedan citat iz knjige Veliki Gatsby koja je rekla Daisy Buchanan, koja mislim da se savršeno slaže uz ovu temu. a to je, znači, ide ovako. Rekla mi je da je djevojčica. Okrenula sam glavu i zaplakala. U redu, rekla sam, drago mi je da je djevojčica. Nadam se da će biti nadam se samo da će biti budala. Za djevojku na ovom svijetu je to najbolje što može biti. Predivna mala budala. I to su zapravo jedine riječi kroz cijelu knjigu s kojima se ja slažem, koje je ona rekla. I kao nekakav zaključak ovog svega mislim da bi mogli reći da su još žene, ajmo ne gledati pravo, ajmo gledati tu slobodu koju su imale su najveću slobodu u antičkom Rimu, dok smo očekivali da će neki uvjeti biti najgori. Mislim da sam dala odgovor na svoje pitanje s kojim sam počela ovaj govor, a to je li nam feminizam potreban, ja mislim da je, a za one koji se još uvijek propituju je li nam potreban, moje pitanje za vas je, mislite li da je 30 godina jednakosti između muškaraca i žena previše naprema više od 19. stoljeća nejednakosti među njima?
Which one is full?
I'm for.
Well, off you go.
Okay. So, standardized testing should be abolished. In my opinion, yes. Because standardized testing does not measure a student's ability to perform a task. The only thing it measures is the student's ability to take a test, which is nothing more than memorizing what you need and then applying that knowledge one single time. And never again, because usually teachers will spend a month explaining to you the subject and everything you need to know about it, for you to only take a test 1 month after and nothing ever comes out of it. You maybe use 1/5 or 1/10 of what you actually learned in the next topic you'll be discussing, but ultimately you do not learn anything and you just memorize it and immediately forget about it in the next morning. A common proverb can be used to describe this. You cannot judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, because, well, fishes don't climb trees, last time I checked.
So, regarding why standardized tests actually should not be abolished is because they have proven themselves as a really good metric for improving and measuring one's knowledge and how a lesson was well accepted and learned by the students. And despite them being also a tool to test, as you said, how good one can take a test, that's because they're put into action that way. It was not their original idea and the reason for their existence. They were originally thought of as something that could give everyone an equal or as equal as possible way to measure how much have they learned or how much have they shown, with all the same questions on the same level and not measured to fit one another. Just like that, taking out data from the test, how have their statistic looks, it helps the educational systems improve themselves. And for example, if they see that there is something going down, like the test scores are awful, they'll try to see how can they improve the school system and how can they explain to the pupils better and make it more interesting so they actually learn. And also, if something is going good, then they will try to find it and keep it, because if it is good, why should you leave it out?
Well, yes, a common phrase is said, if it works, why fix it? Well, simple reason, we're not fixing it, we're improving it. Tests can explain data, they can make it easier for you to achieve data, and that is certainly a good thing, but for most students, it's false data. Students can easily cheat on those standardized tests. It isn't very difficult. We've all at least at some point done it. And that's already messing up the data you're talking about. And the second thing is that, well, not every standardized test is taken in the same environment. Sometimes a red tractor may drive by and distract the students. Sometimes the student might just have a bad day and it will not be how they're all the time, just one time they happened to wake up with the wrong foot and couldn't figure out how to do a derivative of a number 7. It is not in a vacuum. You have to understand that it is never in a vacuum. Gathering data in a vacuum is perfect, but it will never happen. So you should always have a different way of actually gathering how students can perform tasks, not just tests.
Yeah, but that's how we standardize tests. you actually look at the majority. Like, of course, there's going to be some deviation. That's normal with anything. Nothing is ideal. But there are also tests, standardized tests, that are taken in perfectly isolated environments where pupils are social distance, even with the times where there was no corona. So even before that, students were on a distance without phones, anything, everyone in their chairs, everyone was in their seat, and there was no chance of them cheating, and even if they tried to cheat, that was the end. It's over, nothing of the test. And that's why a lot means about how the tests are put into action. Because standard tests themselves, as already said, are very good for improving, for showing and looking at the data, seeing how do pupils deal with it. Of course, no one is good, but we find a way to deal with it. People find a way to deal with things. If you fail the first test, even a pupil will try to work harder for the second one and so improve themselves in the future. Because not only the school system improves, the pupils do improve too, and everyone learns from where they've already messed up. And so it's an improving and important for everyone, not just the school or this data system.
So you said that a student will fail the first test and then improve on the second one. Well, that just sounds like that student needed more time to figure out what they were actually talking about. And in reality, it wasn't the test that improved, it was rather they just needed more time to figure it out. So if we allowed students to have a lot more time to figure something out, they didn't put them into perfect squares on each month. 1 month, you study this subject in maths. The day after, you do the test. And then a week later, you get it, and a week later, you repeat. It is just repetitive and not teaching anything. Some students will lag behind, some will be in front. It can never be put in the same box. Putting every student behind the same test will not show their advantage. It will just show the ones that managed to figure it out in time, or maybe even had resources, something to help them. Again, I'm going back to my vacuum point. It's never a vacuum, and you have to understand that. And certainly it does bring to the students that they might fail, they need to try harder, but why should they fail a test to realize that, even though half of them already know it? When students enter the classroom, some of them already know they're going to fail, because they don't understand anything. Then they fail, get an F, which actually causes their grade to plummet. Then a week later, they get an A. Why? Because they finally figured it out. It is just putting it into pointless boxes that serve no point.
Yeah, but that's because for some people, like they need a validation to see how they're doing. So, for example, you fail a test. Okay, you know you failed. You see what you've gotten wrong, what you've gotten right, and then you learn from your mistakes. Both you and the teacher, and every normal teacher should ask a student if they need help and try to explain the topic more to them. And if it won't be the teacher, then the student should seek out some help professionally from an instructor or someone else that knows what they're doing. And it's not the tests that are the problem. The problem is how they're put into action and presented to pupils. So it's more a problem with teachers and presenting and not the tests themselves.
Well, to me it sounds like we could also solve the problem by removing tests and maybe upping the pay of the teachers and maybe upping the qualifications necessary for one to become a teacher. And instead of tests, there could be oral examinations or maybe professionals who understand the point that a test is just memorizing, pointless memorization. And what you said about the tests not really improving, rather just students needing validation, that is true, but also remember that a week before a test, there's usually some repetition, some sort of preparation for the exam, and most students will at that point also know that they do not know nothing. They will know that they will not manage to catch up. And also seeking help from outside sources, such as tutors or maybe asking their grandparents or parents. Well, aren't schools designed to actually do everything by themselves, not necessarily any additional outside help?
It's a country problem with the teachers. It just shows to what a problem the country has fallen, and it's not the pupils that are faulty. The pupils are used as a metric also, and tests are metric system that has proven to be good. And oral examinations, like, there will be the same problems with the test, anxiety and all. You cannot negotiate that. If one doesn't know first the test, who says that they won't fail in an oral examination too? It's simple. There's always learning from mistakes and balance, and if you don't know, you don't know. Okay, it is up to you if you choose you want to learn or not, or improve or not, and how are you going to do it? Will you even try, or will you just say, I don't care?
So standardized tests should be abolished for many reasons. One of the main reasons is because standardized tests are cause stress, panic and anxiety for many students, and are also the reason many students skip school on days they have certain tests, and that harms them because because of one test they didn't only skip the subject that they have the test in, but they skipped also the rest of the subjects, which could affect their grades in the future.
I think that standardized tests should not be abolished because not only do they show the statistics of how our current education is working, they show how students do well in school, but they also are a way to show students how much knowledge they have and how much they need to work on. Because in a lot of cases it happens if some teacher does not do the tests right, does not either do them at all or make them the proper way that the student sees how much they know. They go to certain colleges thinking that they have all the knowledge in the world, but then they fail the first year because they came thinking that they know all because they had all A's, because they didn't do proper standardized tests which prove them differently.
So you said that standardized tests are a way to measure knowledge, and I disagree with that because, as it was already said, you shouldn't judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree. The same way you shouldn't judge someone's or measure someone's intelligence with a standardized test, because some people have trouble memorizing the details that are needed for the test. Some people have trouble expressing themselves on paper, and some people just have trouble taking tests in general.
You do have some fair points, but from personal experiences, sometimes you get a push in the right direction if you're shown that maybe the amount of knowledge you have is not correct. For example, if you're writing a grammar test and then from a conditional exercise you get a lower grade, and you then realize that maybe you don't know a certain language the way you thought you know it, and it pushes you that you now start listening harder in classes and to do the work needed, that the next time you either retake the test or in the next test, you do a lot more better. Another thing why standardized tests should not be abolished is because they also show teachers how much work they need to do with certain students, or what assignments should they make for them. Should they do harder assignments, or should they do more grammar or more calculating, depending on the results of the tests. And it's also another way that can improve our educational systems if they're to be statistically checked by more than just one teacher, maybe 3 or 4 that they check it, how they were done, so they can change the entire educational systems.
I think you can change the entire educational system based on a few standardized tests, because first of all you can cheat on a test in your class, and so that would ruin the statistics and would not help in bettering the educational system, and also that would not help in bettering of the educational system.
Of course, there's always some cheating, but I don't know, in a class of 25, there's 1 or 2 that cheat. So if you take, for example, 500 of the same tests, you would in the end have a very small percent of people who cheated, and you still have a valuable result to test how certain generation knew a subject or a topic.
So cheating, although it is a big problem, would not be in those great measures, because always you can take some measures to prevent it, like taking phones from students, checking the desks before they start writing, and checking if they have little papers somewhere. And it can be prevented, and you can threaten them with, if they're caught with it, that they're going to fail the test and not have a chance to correct their grades.
So technically you're right, but I don't think that standardized test should be used specifically to measure a generation's knowledge, because that generation learned what they needed for the test and most likely forgot it a week after the test, because the way you learn to take standardized tests isn't the way you will remember what you're actually learning. And so I think test should be abolished, and a new way to learn should be invented or introduced to schools to ensure that pupils actually remember what they're learning and don't forget it like the day after the test.
That's why maybe some certain stress from taking these tests should be taken away by, for example, maybe making that you don't take tests from all subjects, maybe for the ones that you're really preparing for, like if you want to go to medicine, that you write biology, chemistry, physics. If you want to study mathematics, that you write tests for mathematics, physics, and things that are interesting to you, so that when you learn them, you're learning them for yourselves, and these tests are just a way to check if you properly learned what you were studying for.
Svima, moje ime je Matija i danas ću vam predstaviti zašto ja smatram da latinski jezik zapravo nije mrtav jezik i zašto je on uistinu bitan i dan danas. Sigurno ste se 100 puta svi zapitali kao učenici, a možda i kao profesori, da latinski jezik zapravo u današnjem svijetu možda i nema velike koristi, jer zapravo u nijednoj zemlji nije službeni jezik. Ali iako to nije tako, ja smatram da je on jednako bitan i možda jedan od najvažnijih jezika na svijetu. Svaki današnji jezik je izvukao svoje korijene iz latinskog jezika. Pa predočimo to ovako. Latinski jezik je bila majka koja je na porodu rodila mnogo djece, a kasnije morala za njih se i žrtvovati. Da bi se žrtvovala, dala im je sve što je imala kao i svaka majka. Svim romanskim jezicima, na primjer francuskom, talijanskom i ostalima, i portugalskom, koji su recimo izrazito slični, dala je svoje korijene. Tako da recimo su njihove riječi izrazito slične. I kad odete u Italiju, svaki Italijan koji ode u Španjolsku bit će mu izrazito lako prepoznati jezik, jer nema baš puno razlika. Tako je, na primjer, recimo Hrvatski sabor sve do 19. stoljeća koristio latinski jezik kao službeni jezik. Iako svi smatramo, pa čak i Hrvatski sabor sam, smatrao u jednoj temi, jedan zastupnik, da bi se latinski jezik trebao ukinuti jer ne vidi previše svrhe. Pogotovo u osnovnim školama gdje je izborni predmet. Zamislite sada da idete na pravni fakultet, a mnogi od nas će se za to odlučiti, a ja vjerujem da sam možda i ja i nadam se jedan od njih. I uvijek slušam one iste priče, pa tako je mog oca koji je završio pravni fakultet, jer to da je uvijek znao pasti ispit i mnogo učenika koji su išli na druge fakultete po Hrvatskoj, zato jer je latinski jezik i rimsko pravo kao predmet bio jedan od najtežih. I mnogi od njih su, nažalost, baš radi toga odustali od obrazovanja prava. No, zamislite sada jednu situaciju koja se dogodila u Sjedinjenim Američkim Državama prije nekoliko godina, kada je bio pomor pčela i kada je odvjetnik morao obraniti jednog pčelara koji je bio oštećen jer su mu uginule su mu sve košnice. Razlog je bio taj što su se koristili pesticidi koji su zabranjeni. No, međutim, jedan od najvećih problema je bio taj što odvjetnik sa druge strane nije poznavao latinski jezik baš najbolje, niti je znao pčelarsku tematiku, dok je ovaj drugi u privatno vrijeme bio pčelar. I bilo mu izrazito lagano, jer je bio praktički, kako bi se reklo, na domaćem terenu. I zamislite sada kakva je to situacija, zašto je ovaj izgubio spor, i bilo mu je na kraju izrazito žao što nije bio možda malo obrazovaniji, što nije mislio više. U samom povijesti latinskog jezika, latinski jezik su razvili Latini koji su živjeli u okolici Lacija i kasnije su sa rimskim osvajanjima širili svoj jezik po Bliskom istoku i na kraju skoro po cijeloj Europi. Svi oni su ostavili bitan trag. Ja mogu otvoreno reći da je Hrvatska zapravo živi od latinskog jezika i da nije bilo Latina niti Rimljana, da mi možda danas ne bismo mogli niti živjeti. Glavna grana hrvatskog gospodarstva je turizam, a taj turizam živi od Dioklecijanove palače, Pulske arene i još mnogih ostavština koje su nam dali upravo Rimljani. Sama Grčka, koja je nekad bila izrazito veliki pogon kulture, kasnije kada su pokorili Rimljani, dobila je mješavinu tih dviju kultura. Danas se smatra jednom od najkulturnijih zemalja na svijetu i brojni znanstvenici su upravo proveli baš vrijeme tamo. Ako ste gledali film, recimo The Murder Mystery, sjetite se onda jedne scene koje nisu, kada se dešavala, pošto se film dešavao u Italiji, nitko od njih nije znao talijanski, ali glavni glumac je zapravo u filmu završio fakultet gdje je morao učiti latinski jezik, pa je koristio latinski kao jezik sporazumijevanja. Situacija je također bila gdje svećenici moraju na završnom ispitu završiti, držati misu sat vremena na latinskom jeziku. Jedna scena koja je stvarno istinita je tak kada su u filmu The Two Popes, kada su dva pape, današnji papa Franjo i Benedikt XVI, naime Benedikt XVI je rekao u svom oproštenom govoru da je uvijek govorio samo latinski, kada govori neke loše vijesti. Razlog je bio taj što je rekao da nitko od svećenika skoro, iako su svi ugledni kardinali i izrazito obrazovani, ne zna latinski jezik i mnogi ga ne razumiju. Tek kasnije kada su dobili prijevod su shvatili da je najavio svoj odlazak sa Svete stolice. Izrazito je bitno koristiti latinski jezik iz razloga što se susrećemo i dan danas sa njim. Recimo, znoj štedi krv dolazi od latinske riječi, od latinske poslovice koja je zapravo slogan Hrvatske vojske. Također je slogani brojnih drugih vojskih komandosa koji su danas jedni od prestižnih u svim ratovima. Legija stranaca je koristila latinski jezik jedno vrijeme kao službeni, dok ga nisu prebacili na francuski. Ja osobno smatram da je latinski jezik izrazito bitan i da nikad ne može biti mrtav, niti da će ikada izumreti, jer svi imamo njegove korijene, poput recimo riječi navigare, navigacija ili natio nacija, koje se koriste u svakodnevnom jeziku. Nadam se da ste nešto naučili i iskoristio bi priliku i da prenamijenimo onu poznatu poslovicu veni vidi vici u veni vidi di vici, što znači dođe vidjeti nauči. A nadam se da ste vi nešto naučili. Hvala.
Može.
Okay. So, I am standing to not abolish standardized tests because standardized tests. Sorry. So I'm against this, and the reason why is because these tests help students learn the subjects better. It helps them to test their own knowledge and to really get the sense of how much do they really know. Standardized tests are scheduled, and this is why the students should be able to know when to start studying, and it depends on the student on how much effort they're willing to put in. Even though some students may not be willing to study a certain subject, standardized tests should be in every subject, so that they test the knowledge.
Okay. So I stand for the abolishment of standardized testing. It serves no purpose in today's world because of a simple thing called inequality. It is not equal. It is not measured in a vacuum. When you're taking a test, it is never going to be the same as if you took it tomorrow or yesterday. You cannot just show up at school and be completely ready. There will always be some fear. You will be fearful of the test. Maybe you just woke up on the bad side of the bed this morning. Maybe a red tractor drove by and you were confused what happened, so you miswrote something, didn't realize it. It is not the same for every student. It will never be the same. And you cannot judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree. Not every student will be able to just memorize everything and then write it down simply. Some will have it easier, some will have it harder, some will cheat, some will be fair. And it is never the same. No matter how hard you try, no matter how difficult it may be, it will never be the same.
Okay, thank you, dear colleague. You stated that there is fear in the students. The thing is that by preparing themselves at home and at school, they need to be secure in their knowledge. Okay, maybe some subjects are relevant in the long run for them, but they should still know at least the basics that are needed for standardized tests. And that is why that standardized tests should be as bare minimum bare minimum knowledge level. As well, you said that it's not the same for every student. Okay, I agree with this. It's not the same, but by going to school and the teachers teaching their subject, the students who put in the effort will be able to learn. If they do not know something, they can ask the professor or anybody. And of course they have the internet right now, which is a great source of information. Also, you said that some people may cheat. Yes, that is always a possibility, but cheating is, well, it's kind of part of life sometimes. You need to get by as well. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you for saying that. So yes, cheating is a part of life, I would agree, but the problem here is that it's not fair, is it? It's not fair. Because the whole point of it is that the standardized test, every single student takes the same test and they have the exact same thing in front of them. A piece of paper, a pen, maybe a calculator, whatever you have that is required, right? But those who cheat have more things on the desk, have more stuff available to them. And the same with the internet is correct. But the problem is, standardized testing is not a valuable measure of someone's intelligence. You, for example, may be able to memorize an entire sheet of paper like that. That's amazing for you, but then again, that isn't what is required most of the time. For example, biology is not just memorizing the taxonomy of each species. That can be looked up in seconds nowadays. It's understanding why this creature behaves this way. It is not just memorizing the thing in a textbook. It is not what makes a person understand something. And tests, well, like we all know, you wake up, you take the test, and immediately after you forget everything you learned because like only about maybe 1/10 will be useful and the 1/25 you will actually use. So yes.
Okay. So you're saying that by abolishing these tests, that students would learn better, right? So so what's the motivation for some students? Let's say the students who are a little bit worse, or do not put in the same amount of effort, especially in primary school. So by giving them these tests, this is an additional kind of motivation for them to at least try to get a good grade, if anything. It doesn't have to interest them, maybe it'll interest them in the future, of course. By cheating, again, this is why standardized tests are supervised by the professor, and they have to try their best to stop anybody from cheating and to prevent anybody being able to have an advantage over some task. But that's down to the professor. If somebody actually does try to cheat, it is on their soul. And if somebody tries to put in the effort by learning something, they'll have the knowledge, the cheater won't, and maybe later on the cheater will need this knowledge, but they won't have it. Yeah.
That is certainly true, yes. The cheater will need that knowledge, but, well, if the cheater doesn't indeed need that knowledge, that means the cheater succeeded. If I cheat on biology and my friend didn't, he knows, in reality, he knows more than I do, but I cheated. I got an A, he got a B. And in the end, I ended up going to the university for biology, and he didn't. He didn't cheat, he actually deserves a B, I deserved a C. And so what happens then? Well, he doesn't do what he wanted and what he could have done, and I end up achieving something. I go to the university and maybe I pass. Maybe I have connections, maybe I pass. I become a biologist, one day get a PhD, and eventually I will figure it out. Eventually I learn what needs to be learned. And standardized tests just knocked him down a peg and rose me up because I cheated. Because a conscience is, well, also you will hear a lot of people say a conscience is just a nuisance, a bother. Because people with conscience end up, well, performing less than those who do not have the conscience that others have.
Okay, so, well, As a reply to your statement, I'd say that yes, people who cheat do sometimes get away with it, and it is a big problem in schooling, which should be stopped, of course. But standardized tests should be really just basic knowledge of every subject, and students should not be permitted to cheat at all. So we should take measures while writing these standardized tests to completely prevent students from being able to cheat. Because if you look here, you're in a classroom, and people will have a test, you said a test, pencils, whatnot, and something else. And then there's somebody with a paper, you'll see that, and then you're going to catch them cheating.
Well, okay, not everyone will cheat the paper. I mean, this is a thing, right? Smartwatch. Last time I checked, most teachers don't even notice they have one. Got away a couple of times, but anyways. Well, some people will cheat, and that will happen, and they might get better off, and it's unfair, alright. But the point being, the other thing about standardized testing is, it's not an actual measure of intelligence. For every subject, as I said, mathematics, standardized testing is alright. But biology, chemistry, physics, all those. And also, you said every single student should take at least some tests to actually improve on and to actually see what they like. Well, yeah, but that can be achieved without tests. Why should the student have to take a test in every single subject when they can just have a couple of lectures and just see what they like and later on choose what they want to actually take tests in?
Okay.